Hey, so I wanted to give you, I know we could do this on a call, but I just want to make a quick video for solidarity's sake. I want to give you a breakdown on repair amendments because I don't remember on the Maury deal when we were in Grapevine what exactly I taught you or conveyed to you. But so, which brings me to my first point of 3. I can hold mine if you need me to.
No, I was just going to let you get over the speed bump. I know they're pretty full.
Which brings you to my first, which brings me to my first point of 3 points. So the 3 points that I'm going to cover are the agent relationship in a repair negotiation, the repair negotiation itself, and then the third part will be how we're going to put the request together. So these all function independently, but they also all function together. So it's not as complicated as it sounds, but I just want you to understand all of the parts. Number 1 is agent relationship. So with each agent, I'm going to ask myself 3 questions. Number 1, what's my agent rapport as it currently sits? On the particular deal in question, just ask yourself the question, have I built good rapport with this agent? And do I have the ability to build good rapport with this agent? This agent in this particular instance is representing an investor that seems to be a little tight on money, or maybe has just negotiated a lower rate. She's in Mansfield, and for whatever reason, right now, we don't have good rapport with her, in my opinion. I think we have an open line of communication. It's not that we're in a bad spot, but, she is certainly not, she has no emotional tie-in and no emotional desire to help us. So, agent relationship is evaluated. Number 1, what's my current rapport? And what can I do, if anything, to increase that rapport? And from that comes number 2, which is this a logical agent or an emotional agent? Now, what we were dealing with before when we were dealing with Chad was a fiercely logical, so low emotion, it was almost confusing agent, right? Like, it was difficult to gauge his response because it was so flat and so fiercely logical. There's strength in that, both for him and us, because logic brings with it stability. Emotion, which I think is what we're dealing with now and on our current deal, emotion brings with it higher highs and lower lows, but less stability, and by its nature, more potential for the deal to fall apart. So part of the reason that this is different than what I taught you with Chad, and remember with Chad I taught you green box, which is green box is what we do with logical agents. Emotional agents is a different type of conversation because we need to appeal to their emotion. And number 3, what's this agent's general production level? What type of business does she normally engage in? Is she used to dealing with investors, or does she primarily run a retail business and happens to be working with an investor on this property? My guess would be, based on where she lives, and granted, I haven't talked to her at all, but just kind of sideline listening to what's been said about it thus far, I think she probably typically deals with retail type agents and is now dealing with an investor. So the first point is, what's the rapport? The second point is, are they an emotional or logical agent? And the third point is, what type of client do they typically deal with, and what is their relationship with that client? I think her client's probably driving the boat at this point, and that's likely not going to change, and we can chalk that up to cultural or whatever it may be. Okay, so first, in the repair negotiation, we have The first part is agent relationship, that dynamic of what's going on. Now we'll move on to part 2, which is negotiating the repair amendment. So within negotiating the repair amendment, the first thing you need to do is obviously read the inspection report. The most extreme of this is I'm going to ask for everything in the inspection report, and I'm going to send them the inspection report. A couple of things on repair requests to keep in mind. Is this distracting?
No, sorry. Okay. I just realized I started making a clicking sound because I was thinking.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Not helpful.
I was like, what is she doing?
It was my mouth.
Okay.
My bad.
And I thought it was your mouth. And
I was pushing air bubbles through my teeth.
I was like, is she okay? Now that I know what it is, feel free to continue. But I didn't know before. I was
it's
like,
my heart, John.
What on God's green earth is going on? I was like, is it her cup or her pen? Like, what is she doing? Refocus is... So, when you're looking at a repair request, you're going to make very specific requests. So I'll give you an example. I negotiated, interestingly enough, for the individual that did this inspection report on the property that we're talking about, I negotiated a roof for him. Well, I could have said, and many agents will say, just put a new roof on the house. Okay. I mean, that's one thing that we could do. And that'll get us a roof, but is that going to get us an architectural shingle? What about the decking? What about the drip edge? What about the plumbing penetrations? What about the shingle? Are we going to get a reclaimed shingle, or are we going to get a Tamco shingle that is a lower quality 3-tab shingle, or are we going to get a GAF architectural shingle? What color is it going to be? So I negotiated and probably, frankly, over specified what I wanted. But in a repair negotiation, I will take over specification versus under specification. Because if I say something like, I want everything under the house excavated to 18 inches. Okay. What's under the house? And 18 inches from what? From the floor decking or from the joist? Yeah, I mean, so you need to look at the factors of whatever repair you're asking for. How and in what way do you want it to be done? And then sometimes I will specify what proof that I expect to have happen. So to go back to my example of the roof replacement, I required that it also be performed by my roofer that I trust and know. And that was a bit of a stretch. I didn't know if they were going to agree to it, but they did. So we knew that the roof needed to be replaced, and a lower skill agent could just say, replace the roof. And that's not necessarily incorrect, but it depends on what the expectation is. And in this particular instance, I know this client's going to be in this house for sure the next probably like 8 to 10 years, and they're probably more on like a 15 to 18 year timeline in this house, maybe longer. So it's kind of their dream house. They're going to be here for a while. So I know that a hailstorm's probably going to come through and cause that roof to need to be replaced sometime in the next probably 5 to 10 years. But in the event that it's not, because they have a lot of tree coverage, I would like to set my client in a position to succeed where they don't have the deferred expense of a roof perhaps as soon. So 3-tab shingles rated for I think 15 to 20 years, and an architectural shingle is going to be rated for 30 on the materials. So be specific in your request. You can't just say insulate the plumbing. Where's the plumbing at? What do you want insulated? How do you want it insulated? Do you want spray foam insulation, or do you want wrap insulation? How do you want that job performed? Especially when you're dealing with an investor and a contractor. So another part, so this is looking at negotiating the repair request. Ideally, you will have a pre-request presentation conversation. So I can send a repair request cold and just send it over to them. But going back to the what type of agent am I dealing with, if I'm dealing with an agent that I don't have good rapport with and is highly emotional and has a client that's running the show, I mean, that's almost guaranteed to blow up, especially if it's a big request with a lot of things that are going to be viewed as very expensive. So when you're getting your repair negotiation ready to present, one of the factors I don't say that you need to, but a higher skill agent is going to keep in mind, what's the cost associated with this? What am I asking them to do cost-wise, and what's their capability to actually do that? And from there, I'm then going to make a very specific request. Can you turn around for a second?
Yeah. She's expecting us. But I know. Yeah, you're on a roll.
I mean, I got 5 minutes and I'm done.
Okay.
We'll just go through the Previn-Looks neighborhood over here.
Yeah.
Also to rent house.
There you go.
I don't know if it won't be that close. We'll see. So then I can make a very specific repair request. So if I'm asking for an excavation request, I may specify, and I mean, since you have a floor plan of the house, I may specify where I want the excavation to occur. So some of what you're balancing here on a repair request, and the reason that I always encourage you to ask the client what they want, in addition to you not picking, is what's their expectation. What expectation do they have of what's going to be done? Now, I try to have a pre-contract conversation about that, about what they're going to, like what the owner's going to do and what they're not going to do. I don't know that occurred here, but client management is definitely an important part of this. And one of the things to keep in mind here is that we want to keep this deal together as much as possible. And nice. That is cool. Cool van, man. And to have good expectations about what a $145,000 house built in 1934 should be. Hold on my back.
Yeah, because of roofing stuff.
On what a house built in 1934 for $145,000 should be. Like, what should that look like? Because there's certain safety items that we want to have addressed for sure. But in the spirit of how we look at an inspection report, or how I encourage people to look at it, safety number 1, 2, fit and function, and number 3, longevity. I kind of get the sense from the limited interaction that I've had with this agent that we are at or nearing the top of what her client is willing to do. Now, I don't know what his holding costs on it are and what his desire to sell it is. But so far, we negotiated our commission with her. So she made, it's a pretty awful, terrible spot to be sitting. He must be a real estate agent. Sitting in a spot that bad. It's in his truck, just in Texas. So basically, we got her to give up her half point, for her to take 2% and give us 3%, which in my opinion is really how that should go. Anyway, buyer's agent works hard enough for the money that they're getting. If that listing agent didn't want to negotiate with their client to get 5%, that's their protocol and their decision. That's not reflected or dependent on me.
Got blue
Great.
roof, though.
Yeah, it's blue over everything. Yeah, you always want to pick your roof color. I've seen sellers put some pretty atrocious roof colors on houses just to be assholes. So I think that in this particular instance, you're dealing, if we're gardeners planting seeds, you need to figure out what kind of soil that you're working with. And this soil is kind of delicate. So if you start trying to slam a bunch of seeds down in there, those bikes back there. If you try to start slamming a bunch of seeds down in there, you might run yourself into some problems sooner than later. Because, I mean, keep in mind that she has the option to just come back and go, nah, we're not going to do any of that. And then your client is terminating and they're out their inspection fee plus their option fee. So, I mean, in this case, I think like $650. I mean, that's a lot of money. So, keep in mind, try not to let the client run the show. I misspoke. Don't let the client, don't get in the emotional muck with your client. Try to stay out of that with him. And it's hard when you're super related to him. Yes. It's hard it can be hard. I don't want 2-story. Is it 2-story?
Is it? I think that's an attic.
No, I think it's 2-story.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty tall.
That's pretty tall. No, it's 2-story. I'm out. Especially not in this neighborhood. It costs a small fortune to heat and cool that sucker.
Just a check-in. It's been 6 minutes.
I know. Thank you. Thank you for your check-in.
Yep, carry your own weather. Don't get in the emotional.
Yeah, carry your own weather. Be the thermostat, not the thermometer. So, if the client says, well, I'm not going to negotiate at all, I mean, are they just saying that, or do they really mean that? Like, is he truly willing to walk away from $650 if this seller doesn't give him just everything that he wants? I mean,
bikes look like they've been on some meth runs.
Definitely. Well, the meth bikes, some of the best ones, they broke in good.
Sorry.
You usually got to travel far to get that meth. Oh, you got a daughter named Crystal Metheny?
Dude's out there. You got a wife beater on, tattoos, and cowboy hat. Oh, and she has peace, love, and crabs.
Nice.
Tie-dye shirt.
Nah, that's way too nice a house for meth. They ain't even do no meth in there. I think their yard all decorated. They're doing no meth on that.
They do pills.
Yeah.
Bougie people drugs.
Oh, definitely drunk. Look at that fence. That's a good looking fence. Kind of did a ghetto fab style. Got that 2x6 on the bottom.
How are you gonna send this video to him?
I'm gonna put it on YouTube. So we've kind of blended into the third point, which is preparing your negotiation request and then submitting it. So it's important to be as specific as possible, and then send the relevant inspection pages. So you're kind of taking a green box approach at that point, but you're sort of going like green box on steroids with an emotional agent. And I certainly don't want to just lead with green box and just a flat request, because it's going to fall on deaf ears and it's probably not going to get the positive end result that you're looking for. So watch this video, take some notes, and then if you have questions, reach out to me and we'll work through it further and get it put in. And keep in mind, like, this is the stuff that, a transactional versus a relational type agent. A transactional agent just slams the request and lets the agent say no and moves on. A relational agent is trying to be in relation not only with the client but also with the listing agent, and ideally keeping the seller's wants and needs in mind as well, and trying to frame and present the inspection request in a spirit of, I can be respectful and understanding of what somebody is trying to accomplish without necessarily giving them that, right? This investor wants to sell this house for as much money as he can. He's trying to make the highest profit that he can. So I try to present my repair request in one of two ways. I'm either going to present really big stuff first and then filter down to the small stuff, which is probably what I would recommend in this case. And then sometimes I'll present the small stuff first and then filter down to the bigger stuff. That's if I think they're going to do more of those things. So then I'm getting agreement, and then they're saying no to one thing at the end. In this instance, I think that she's likely going to say no to your big items and say yes to your smaller ones. So, address your bigger longevity type stuff first, and then address your safety stuff later, so that from a negotiation perspective, I'm getting as many of my items approved and put in there as I can. And then perhaps I can provide a reasonable explanation to, for sure. I mean, maybe there's a reasonable explanation from the investor of why something can't be done. Because they excavated a good portion of the house, so why didn't they excavate the other side? Which is sort of the negotiation part. Sometimes I'll just call and ask questions of like, well, why didn't they do this? Like, what was it about this part of it that it wasn't done? Was it an oversight? So if I can gain agreement on something without having to make it a part of the repair negotiation, I mean, I'm still going to put it on the request because I want them to do it, but I don't necessarily, then I'm not giving up ground. So like the dryer vent, I would just say, I mean, I saw it sitting there. Was he planning on doing it? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I mean, he's essentially already agreed to that without agreeing to it, right? So then I can present my repair request as, well, I'm just asking for these couple of things. He's already agreed to do this stuff. He knew he needed to do it. He just hadn't got to it yet. And then I can move down the list from there. So let me know what questions you have.